When news broke that the Swedish royal family was beginning a rare 3-day state visit to Canada, most Americans barely noticed. It sounded ceremonial, polite, even predictable, the kind of diplomatic headline that usually fades after a single news cycle. But beneath the surface, something far more consequential was unfolding. King Carl XVI Gustav, Sweden's longest reigning monarch, and Queen Sylvia weren't just touring Ottawa and Montreal for tradition's sake. They arrived at a moment when Canada is quietly reconsidering one of the most important military decisions it has faced in decades, and that reconsideration could reshape North American defense dynamics in ways many Americans have not yet realized. For viewers in the United States, this story is worth paying attention to. Our closest ally, our NORAD partner, our neighbor across the world's longest secure border, is exploring a military move that could shift the center of gravity in North American air power. And it all begins with a Swedish jet, and a question few expected Canada would ever ask. Does Ottawa still want to rely on the United States for its next generation of air defense? The timing is no coincidence. One of Europe's largest defense contractors, SAAB, used the opportunity of the royal visit to amplify a message it has been carefully crafting behind the scenes. Canada could host final assembly of the Gripen fighter jet, potentially bringing 10,000 research and manufacturing jobs into the country. SAAB has openly stated it is prepared to transfer technology, support domestic production, and give Canada something it has gradually lost during its long involvement with the F-35 program, sovereignty over its own fighter fleet. What makes this moment so important is how ordinary it appears at first glance. A Scandinavian king steps off a plane in Ottawa, a few polite speeches, a few handshakes. But when the broader picture comes into focus, the story becomes far more intriguing. It signals a point of intersection: diplomacy, defense strategy, and global competition converging into a single decision that will influence Canada's military identity for decades. And whether Americans like it or not, this decision will affect the United States as well. Canada still relies on its aging CF-18 Hornets, aircraft that entered service in the 1980s. They have performed reliably, but maintaining them has become increasingly difficult. The Canadian government has already announced its intention to purchase the F-35 Lightning II, but the contract remains unfinished, and the price tag continues to be scrutinized, criticized, and politically contested. That hesitation has created an opening, and Sweden has stepped into that space with strategic precision. SAAB's Gripen E, the model promoted to Canada, has earned global respect for its efficiency and operational flexibility. It's often described as a 4.5-generation fighter, combining modern systems without the maintenance complexity and soaring costs of 5th-generation jets. For Canada, with its vast geography, remote northern outposts, and long Arctic approaches, operational costs aren't just accounting issues. They are strategic realities. Parliamentary debates frequently return to budget concerns, and the Gripen offers something the F-35 has never been able to match: long-term affordability without sacrificing capability. But cost is only one part of the appeal. The Gripen E brings an advanced AESA radar, multi-role capabilities, and integrated electronic warfare tools that allow pilots to shift missions rapidly: air defense, surveillance, precision strikes, and more. The aircraft shares data seamlessly with other aircraft and command centers, enabling real-time coordination across land, air, and sea. In an age when situational awareness is as important as firepower, these features matter. Yet the detail that resonates most deeply with Canadian strategists is far more subtle, and this is where the United States should pay attention. The Gripen E can operate from short runways, improvised airstrips, and even straight stretches of highway. It was designed for dispersed operations, meaning it can take off and land from locations too small or rugged for more demanding aircraft. In a country as vast and sparsely populated as Canada, that flexibility is not just practical, it's strategically priceless. Here is where the new value of this narrative emerges. Canada's interest in the Gripen is not only about the aircraft itself, it reflects a growing desire to reclaim autonomy that has eroded under the F-35's centralized, U.S.-controlled maintenance structure. Canadian technicians cannot modify, upgrade, or even repair many parts of the F-35 without American approval. Every software update passes through U.S. channels. Every change requires oversight. And while this level of control makes sense for a joint international fighter program, it also means Canada is no longer fully sovereign over its own air fleet. This has quietly frustrated Canadian defense officials for years. During internal discussions, rarely publicized, the contrast with Sweden becomes painfully clear. The Gripen program allows full technology transfer. Nations can assemble aircraft domestically. They can update software independently. They can maintain fleets without needing permission from Washington. For Canada, a country that once built cutting-edge aerospace technology of its own, this difference strikes a national nerve. And here is the part that should make American viewers pause. If Canada moves toward the Gripen, it signals the first significant shift away from U.S.-centered defense integration in a generation. For decades, Washington assumed Canada's next fighter would be American. But now, a new possibility is emerging. A Canada that buys European, builds domestically, controls its own technology, and diversifies its defense partnerships instead of depending almost exclusively on the United States. This isn't hostility, it isn't a break in alliance, but it is a recalibration, one driven by a desire for sovereignty, economic growth, and strategic independence. And that recalibration could reshape the future of NORAD, Arctic defense, and U.S. Canada military cooperation. As King Carl XVI Gustav arrived in Ottawa, this moment of anticipation rippled through political circles, defense analysts, and military observers. Because everyone understood something Americans are only beginning to grasp. This visit wasn't symbolic. It was strategic. It marked a rare moment when a royal handshake might influence the balance of power not just in Canada, but across North America. As discussions formed behind closed doors in Ottawa, the arrival of Sweden's monarch added momentum to a national conversation that had been simmering quietly for years. Defense analysts across North America immediately understood the implication. A royal visit at this exact moment didn't happen by accident. It happened because Canada is wrestling with a decision that will shape its fighter fleet, its industrial base, and its strategic alignment for the next generation. And Sweden, freshly aligned with NATO after decades of military non-alignment, saw a rare opening to offer something the United States could not: genuine technological sovereignty. The backdrop matters here. Canada has been debating the future of its fighter force for so long that it has become a recurring political storyline. The aging CF-18 Hornets, introduced in the 1980s, continue to work hard, but they operate under mounting strain. They require frequent maintenance, replacement parts are harder to source, and the fleet's capability limitations are increasingly difficult to ignore. Given the vastness of Canadian territory and the responsibility of defending the Arctic, these limitations have become strategic vulnerabilities. The Canadian government's announcement to purchase the F-35 was meant to resolve this uncertainty, but the deal remains unfinished. Costs continue to be scrutinized. Political leaders face pressure from multiple directions: budget critics, defense planners, and a public that remembers past procurement failures. That unresolved contract created a window, and SAAB entered it with a message loud enough for Ottawa to hear. Canada doesn't just have to be an F-35 customer. It can be a Gripen partner. Sweden's approach is fundamentally different from the American model. Rather than pitching a single high-end stealth jet, SAAB presents the Gripen E as part of a long-term ecosystem, one built on shared technology, domestic manufacturing, and the ability for Canada to make its own engineering decisions. The Gripen's reputation for operating from short runways, including improvised airstrips and highway sections, aligns directly with Canada's geography. Northern regions often lack fully equipped airbases, and building new ones would cost billions. The Gripen was designed for these realities. It can deploy quickly, refuel rapidly, and be serviced by small teams instead of massive logistics operations. This capability resonates strongly with Canadian military planners who know firsthand that Arctic defense isn't theoretical. It's an everyday challenge. Distances are long. Temperatures are extreme. Infrastructure is limited. A fighter that can operate effectively in remote conditions without demanding an enormous support footprint is not just attractive, it's strategically logical. From a technology standpoint, the Gripen E brings advanced features Canada cannot modify on the F-35. Its AESA radar, its electronic warfare suite, and its ability to seamlessly link with ground units and command centers reflect a platform built for multi-domain operations. The pilot can switch roles mid-mission, adapting to air-to-air combat, surveillance, or precision strike requirements. This level of adaptability is not unique among modern fighters, but the Gripen's combination of capability and simplicity sets it apart. But the real weight of SAAB's proposal lies with what it offers economically. Canada's Industrial and Regional Benefits Program requires major defense procurements to return value to the national economy. SAAB has embraced this requirement enthusiastically. Instead of offering a modest amount of offset work, the company proposes opportunities that exceed baseline expectations. Component manufacturing, maintenance hubs, engineering development, and long-term employment. The promise of 10,000 high-skilled jobs tied to the Gripen's production and support network is a powerful message during a time when many Canadian regions seek industrial renewal. This is where the conversation takes on a dimension that many Americans may not have considered. Canada's temptation to choose the Gripen isn't driven solely by cost or operational capability. It's motivated by an increasingly visible desire to diversify its defense partnerships and regain control over its own military technology. For decades, the United States has been Canada's default supplier, its strategic partner, and its military backbone within NORAD. But the F-35 program has unintentionally highlighted a vulnerability. Canada does not fully own the aircraft it pays for. Every major component, software update, and maintenance approval flows through American channels. Canadian technicians have limited authority. Canadian engineers cannot make meaningful modifications without U.S.'s oversight. In essence, the F-35 is leased power, not sovereign power. And for a country with a long history of aerospace innovation, this dependence has begun to feel uncomfortable. The Gripen offers a counterweight to that dependence. It promises technology transfer, domestic assembly, and the freedom to update or modify software independently. It also gives Canada a role in shaping the future of the aircraft rather than simply operating it. This level of control resonates deeply with Canadian officials who believe the country must reclaim some measure of strategic independence, especially as global tensions rise and Arctic competition intensifies. Sweden's recent entry into NATO strengthens the political case. As a new alliance member, Sweden now shares not only values but strategic obligations with Canada. A fighter built by a fellow NATO ally simplifies joint operations, training, and interoperability. For Canadians, the symbolism matters. Choosing the Gripen isn't choosing outside the alliance, it's choosing within it. The challenge, of course, is that the F-35 program still has enormous momentum. Canadian companies already manufacture components for the aircraft, supporting jobs and integrating Canada into a vast global supply chain. The F-35 remains a technological powerhouse, stealthy, networked, and deeply connected to U.S. defense systems. For a country so intertwined with American military infrastructure, the F-35 is a natural choice. Yet momentum does not equal inevitability, and that is exactly why Sweden timed this visit the way it did. Canada's decision is more than a procurement plan. It is a reflection of its national identity. It touches on how Canada sees itself within North America, within NATO, and within the global defense economy. Does Canada continue to align tightly with the United States, accepting the constraints that come with the F-35? Or does it broaden its partnerships, rebuild its industrial capacity, and assert a more autonomous role in the world? The presence of King Carl XVI. Gustav made that question impossible to ignore. His visit transformed what could have been a routine debate into a moment of national introspection. And for American viewers, the implications are clear. Canada may be preparing to take a step that subtly shifts the balance of influence in North American air defense, a step that favors independence over reliance, partnership over dependence, and strategic diversity over single-source security. As the debate intensified, a different kind of conversation began taking shape inside Canadian defense circles, one no longer centered solely on the F-35 or the Gripen, but on a deeper question that touched the core of the country's identity. Canada has always prided itself on being innovative, adaptable, and capable of charting its own path, even while maintaining a close partnership with the United States. Yet over the years, especially as the F-35 program matured, many experts felt that Canada had drifted away from that tradition. By relying so heavily on a system controlled almost entirely by Washington, Canada found itself locked inside boundaries it didn't create and couldn't change. This realization hit harder as Sweden's Gripen E demonstrated its capabilities in environments similar to Canada's northern frontier. When SAAB released footage of the Gripen flying through snow-covered landscapes, operating from isolated roadways, and being serviced by small crews in rugged, freezing conditions, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Here was a fighter designed to thrive in the kind of climate Canada faces every winter, not just at bases, but across vast territories where infrastructure is scarce. Meanwhile, the Canadian experience with the F-35 painted a different picture. Every maintenance checkpoint required external approval. Every software update had to be authorized through centralized American channels. Even routine servicing followed strict oversight protocols. For the United States, this level of control ensures consistency and security across all operators. But for Canada, it raised uncomfortable questions. How much control does it really have over the aircraft defending its skies? And what does it mean for a country's sovereignty when it cannot modify or upgrade its own fleet without foreign permission? These questions weren't new. They had been lingering under the surface for years. But Sweden's timing brought them to the forefront. And when King Carl XVI Gustav stood on Canadian soil, it signaled that Sweden wasn't just offering an aircraft. It was offering a partnership built on trust, shared responsibilities, and mutual independence. Canadian officials, particularly those focused on the Arctic, found themselves reevaluating assumptions that had guided national defense planning for decades. The Arctic is rapidly changing. Melting ice is opening new routes for commercial travel and military movement. Nations around the world, including Russia and China, are paying closer attention to the region. For Canada, this is not a future issue. It is a present and growing strategic concern. The country needs a fighter capable of responding quickly, dispersing across remote areas, and operating independently for extended periods. The Gripen's ability to take off from short, improvised runways gives it a unique advantage in this context. The economic implications added another layer. SAAB emphasized that its partnership would not be a simple purchase. It would be a long-term investment in Canadian talent, infrastructure, and industrial growth. Technology transfers, local production, and engineering opportunities could help rebuild parts of Canada's aerospace sector, a sector that once produced world-class innovations, but has, over the years, become increasingly integrated into U.S.-centric supply chains. Many Canadians still remember the Avro Aero, the legendary jet that symbolized the nation's engineering potential. Its cancellation in the 1950s remains a painful reminder of what Canada once aspired to be and what it lost. The Gripen proposal reignited some of that old sentiment. For those who see the Aero as a symbol of national ambition, the idea of producing or assembling a modern fighter in Canada carries enormous emotional and political weight. But the most sensitive part of the debate lies in the shifting dynamics of Canada's relationship with the United States. For decades, both countries have cooperated seamlessly within NORAD, shared intelligence networks, joint exercises, and deep economic integration. The U.S. has long assumed that Canada would continue to align its military acquisitions closely with American systems. And to be fair, this alignment has brought significant benefits to both sides. Yet Canada's growing interest in the Gripen suggests a subtle but meaningful shift. Ottawa is starting to question whether relying almost exclusively on American defense technology serves its long-term interests. Choosing the Gripen wouldn't undermine the U.S. Canada partnership, but it would signal a more balanced and independent approach. For the first time in a generation, Canada is openly considering a path that doesn't lead through Washington, and that alone has raised eyebrows across the American defense community. This shift should not be mistaken for hostility. Canada and the United States remain deeply connected allies. But relationships evolve, nations grow, priorities change, and Canada's desire for greater autonomy reflects its maturation as a global actor, one capable of making decisions that reflect its unique geography, economy, and security needs. Still, the decision is far from simple. The F-35 remains a powerful aircraft with unmatched stealth capabilities and deep integration into U.S. military systems. Canadian companies benefit from participating in the program's supply chain, and any move away from the F-35 risks political backlash both domestically and internationally. Sweden understands this. That's why the royal visit mattered. It provided political cover, diplomatic gravity, and symbolic reassurance that choosing a European partner is not a step away from NATO, but a step toward a more modern and diversified alliance. As Canadian officials weighed their options, one idea started gaining quiet traction: the concept of sovereignty in military procurement. The Gripen program promises full access to technology transfers, domestic manufacturing, and independent software development. Countries can build their own maintenance hubs and retain control over every aspect of their aircraft. For many nations, that represents true ownership and true independence. For Canada, it represents something deeper: the chance to reclaim a part of itself that has been fading for decades. The opportunity to decide, build, maintain, and innovate without relying on external approval. The chance to shape its own future rather than inherit someone else's design. And that brings us back to the moment that started this entire conversation. A king stepping off a plane in Ottawa, and a country realizing that what looked ceremonial was anything but. The Swedish visit exposed a crossroads Canada can no longer ignore. The country must choose between remaining within the familiar boundaries of American-designed defense systems or stepping into a new era of strategic autonomy. In the end, Canada isn't choosing between two jets. It's choosing between two identities. And the world, especially the United States, is watching closely. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Canada's fighter jet crossroads and how Sweden's Gripen could reshape North American air power, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more thoughtful, well-researched defense analysis directly to you, and we truly want to hear from you. This is a topic where your perspective matters. So let's talk. Do you think Canada should prioritize sovereignty and choose a fighter it can fully control, even if it means stepping away from U.S. influence? What aircraft do you believe is the better long-term fit for defending the Arctic? The F-35 or the Gripen E? And here's a big one. Do you think Canada moving toward more independent military decisions is good for North America, or does it create new challenges for the U.S.? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Stay informed, stay engaged, and until next time, we wish you safety, health, and a great day ahead.